Well, welcome to Sunday morning, everybody. I hope that you are having a fantastic morning, and if not, don't worry about that. Just if you're not, we hope to just make your morning a little bit better today. And I'm excited to teach a couple of things that have been on my mind recently, and we, over the past year or so, my wife Destiny and I, we had the privilege of being on a little bit more property than we're currently on. We moved back to a smaller piece of property recently, but my dog Gus, and I don't even know why I wanted to start here, but you'll get it as we go in. I got this little Yorkie Schnauzer, and he loves chasing stuff in the yard. He chased rats, he chased mice, crows, and you know what? Every time he did it, he thought, I'm just the most incredible being on the planet, right? He'd look at me like, look at how amazing this is. One time, though, I was seeing him kind of sniff around in some bushes, and Des is like, I think he's got something big in there. And I'm like, really? I couldn't find it the first time I went in, and then I kind of snuck up behind him, and I watched him, and he had buried a rabbit in the ground. He had caught a rabbit. And I was quite proud of him. It was an extremely proud dad-dog moment, right? So, any cat people in the room? Any cat people? I'm sorry to hear that. Any dog people? Yeah, there we go. For the win. Not to politicize cats and dogs, but whatever. So Gus loves chasing things in the yard, and then I stumbled upon recently the idea of dog racing. I don't bet on dog racing, but when it comes to dog racing, these greyhounds are incredibly quick and fast, and they train these greyhound dogs to chase after fake rabbits because when you chase after a certain type of rabbit, it kicks in a prey instinct for them. And not only they're quick and fast, but they believe that they're finally going to catch this fake rabbit. And day after day, they train chasing these rabbits that are on a track around the inside of this oval. And so they'll drop the gates and they'll chase, these greyhounds will chase after these fake rabbits. And they're biologically wired to chase after rabbits, which is to feed themselves, and so they kind of manipulate this a little bit to be able to bet on them and to be able to get them to race. There's two instances, though, where these greyhounds not all of them completed the race. Now, there's probably more than that, but the two that I saw was one instance, and I'll talk about the first one, and then it'll build off on the second one, but the first instance is when the gates drop, and all these greyhounds, there's about 12 of them in a line, all these greyhounds, the gates drop, and this fake rabbit starts going, and all these greyhounds chase after this fake rabbit. Now, it's poor timing on behalf of this real rabbit that pops out from the middle of the track. Yes, but here's the crazy part, is only one of the dogs chased the real rabbit. The rest kept going around the track, and they all completed the race, but only the one in third actually chased the real thing. The second time it happened, the fake rabbit goes off, the gates drop, and about 30 seconds into the race, about halfway through, the fake rabbit stops. The lead dog doesn't notice, keeps going, and eventually he's like, where's all my friends, right? Turns around, and the rest of the dogs are around this fake dog. They all have muzzles on. They're like poking the fake rabbit, right? They're poking it. And then eventually they just start playing on the track. And I started to think about life and what we chase, what we pursue. And it's so easy for us to pursue the things that might be naturally wired or the things that culturally we're told to pursue because they're just the thing that we've been trained to do. But it's really obvious to me that when we just pursue the things that we're told to pursue without meaning, purpose, or intentionality, that there's certain things that just aren't life-giving and don't bring joy or meaning to our lives. Now, I'm not advocating for not working. Don't hear me say that today. If we don't work, we don't eat, okay? That is a reality. But there are certain things that we chase with our life. There's certain things that on the back of life-giving things to us that we pursue, that if we're not careful, can leave us empty. And the New Testament writers, particularly Jesus, wants us to understand this and wants to orient ourselves or reorient ourselves around that which gives us meaning and purpose and true life. So what we pursue, what we focus on, matters. Now I'm going to share a quote in just a moment, and for those of you with FOMO, you might struggle with this a little bit. Now, Instagram does this, right? Somebody posts about their friends, and it's like, I wish I was there, right? It can produce FOMO, but what I'm hoping is that this just gives us a little bit of insight into our own life rather than, oh, what am I all missing out on? But it's amazing to me how much we focus on that we don't actually think about what the consequence might be or what we value most and pursue those things. And in turn, we end up chasing things that we never really wanted to chase in the first place or leave us empty. Now, there's a guy named Ian, and he writes this. He says this: what you focus on determines what you miss. Now, you're like, okay. But just bear with me for a moment. Now, you're looking at me, hopefully, instead of your cell phone, right? You're looking at me at the front of the room. But by doing that, you are not looking backwards. You're not seeing what's happening in the production booth. You're not seeing the red exit sign at the back of the room. I can see those things because my perspective and my focus is different than yours. But when you focus on something, it means that there's other things in your life that you will miss. Now, that sounds really simple. But when it comes to the practical application of that in our life, how often do we focus on things, not because we wanted to or not because we intentionally did, but we focus on things that don't produce in us meaning or purpose, and we miss out on really good or the best or things that bring life to us. And so today's message is about us refining our focus, about finding things that produce meaning in our life, and I would dare say, in the pursuit of following Jesus, that he would produce in us the best things in life, that he would show us what true life is, that he would show us what true joy is, what peace and rest and contentment really is. And so realistically, all the things that we pursue, we have to evaluate them, and at some point, if they're not producing in us, if they're producing unhealth, or if they're producing in us like many, many levels of stress, and I totally get it. Some of our jobs are stressful. But if it happens in an unnecessary way that we keep repeating, not because we want to, but because we unintentionally live, I think today's message is important, imperative for you. I don't speak this, just full disclosure, from a place of having arrived. I'm fairly easily distracted. I have high tenacity. I like accomplishing things, and I love work. I love it. But I will work for work's sake. And in doing so, I can miss some of the things that truly bring life. And so this is as much learning as it is for me, as it could be today for you. And so today I want to talk about focus, because all through the New Testament, we see examples of Jesus directing his followers or those who are listening to his teaching to pursue the things that are life-giving. Paul, as a follower of Jesus, who wrote the majority of the New Testament, relays this message over and over and over again to a bunch of different churches in the New Testament. And the book of Philippians, which we're going to be looking at today, he lays out very strongly a pathway forward for those who have chosen to follow Jesus. He speaks from personal experience. He speaks of values, of focus, and of pursuit and priorities. And the preceding verses to what we're about to read today, he talks a lot about his accomplishments. Just to give you a little bit of context about Paul, Paul would have been really educated, and from a young age, he would have been tapped into a certain pipeline to become a Pharisee, which was like the highest order of religious leaders. He would have been extremely sharp, and he was motivated. He actually started to destroy the early church. Jesus died, he rose again, the early church starts, and he goes about trying to destroy the early church. He has ambition, he has passion, and it's misplaced, but he has it. And he's climbing up the ranks. People are chanting his name. Isn't that what many people desire, right? Is power, people that would fear them or people would acknowledge them. And so they're chanting his name. He's well educated. He has all the accolades. And then Paul, he has this encounter with Jesus. It changes his life and his value system begins to change. Because when Jesus gets a hold of our life, he reorients us around new things. He reorients us around different set of values, of priorities, what's most important, and things that we aren't to pursue and things that we are. And Jesus invites us into this new way. So Paul accepts this invitation. It changes his life. And then in Philippians 3, and you can read it. No, we're not going to go through it today, but you can go back and you can read it throughout the week. You can read it this week. In Philippians 3, he says, all that I accomplished, like every letter grade that I celebrated with my parents, every accolade, every time they chanted my name, this is what he says, that was all rubbish or garbage in comparison to knowing Jesus and the knowledge of Jesus. It so surpasses all that I could possibly accomplish in my life that it's worth pursuing with the rest of my life. And so it's a value proposition. Paul is saying, and we talked about this last week, that what we want for people is that they would know God, that they would experience God. Because when we know him and we experience him, that there's a life, that there's wholeness, that there's peace, that there's goodness, that there's rest, that we can know that in Jesus we are enough. And we don't have to chase everything for worth. We don't have to chase everything to feel like our lives are meaningful because Jesus gives us all that we need. And so Paul, from that perspective of all these things that you could chase, and I'm not saying that education isn't important. I'm not saying that working isn't important. I'm not saying that influence isn't important. Those are important things, but Paul is saying in comparison to what's most important, they're quite small. And from that perspective, in the preceding verses to what we're about to read today, it sets us up for what Paul is about to say in Philippians 3, and this is where he begins. I'm going to just start in a different verse. Not that I have already obtained all this. Not that I've already obtained all this. He says all this. In those words, all this is what I had just talked about. That he had pursued something with his life. He had an experience with Jesus, and he's saying, I haven't obtained everything in my relationship with Jesus. And here's good news. For those of you that are new to faith, those of you that are beginning to explore faith, none of us in the room have it all figured out. Now, some of us have been on the journey a little bit longer than others, but none of us have it all figured out. Not even Paul, who wrote the majority of our New Testament, had figured it all out. He says, not that I've already obtained all this or have already been made perfect. Now, how many perfect people are there in the room today? Yes, wonderful. I'm in the right room. All right? Not that we've already attained. And what I love about this is Paul has a really good, he's got a really great view of himself. He realizes that he hasn't arrived. He has a correct self-estimate. And for those of you that are new or on the journey, after a number of years of following Jesus, none of us have arrived and we never will. God is a well that we cannot exhaust. But there's more to discover about our Heavenly Father, and there's more to discover about yourself. And this is why at Centerpoint Church, we continually want to say that we want you to know God. Because as we discover God and we discover that there's more to learn, we discover in part who we are as well. For God is a rich, deep well that can never be exhausted. And Paul knew this, but Paul also realized that he was a work in progress. And I'm so thankful that I can also say that I'm a work in progress. I don't have to be perfect. I want to keep my feet moving, but I don't have to have arrived to continually be in relationship with God. And Paul is saying, you know what? We're kind of all in this And none of us have arrived. I love this. But then he continues, brothers, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. In other words, he hasn't arrived at where he's trying to go. But one thing I do. And this is important. This is what he says. But one thing I do. Sorry, words guy up there. Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. Now, I don't know if you recognize this, but that sounds like two things. I put a third finger up, two things. Does that sound like two things to any of you? Forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, but not in the context of action, not in the context of pursuit, not in the context of focus. You see, what you choose to strain towards or focus on means that you cannot look back. Now, it's really easy for us to look back on the people maybe that have hurt us, or the things that we didn't accomplish, or the things we'd wish we'd done. It's really easy to look back and think, you know what, I could have done better with my story. Maybe you have regrets from yesterday or the week or maybe the year. And it's easy to allow the things in the past to define the future. But the amazing part about Jesus is Jesus constantly is making things new. And it's not that we forget about the things that we've done. It's not that we can't look back on our family history and try and figure out our wiring or how to navigate through forgiveness. He's not saying those things. But he's saying when you focus purely on what's behind, you'll miss out on what's ahead. And there is something worth straining towards and pursuing. Now, Paul's going to outline for us what that might look like. But this action is significant for us. Because if we're not careful, we can easily define our lives by what's taken place and not so much about where we're going. And Jesus wants to continually work in and through our life, to pursue growth, to keep understanding what Jesus has done for me, and allow Jesus' finished work to work itself through me and through you. So he says, brothers and sisters, I don't consider myself to have arrived yet, but one thing I do. Not 10 things I do, not 3 things I do. He's saying, one thing I do is I focus my eyes not on what is behind, but what is ahead. And that brings us back to rabbits. You can only have a limited focus. You can't do everything. Nor can you be everything at once. I want you to imagine with me for a moment this verse through the lens of sight. To refocus your eyes on what's ahead rather than what's behind. If you were to focus on one singular action or one intentional action, in light of what Paul is saying, I think Jesus, Paul, and I would love to encourage you today to pursue your relationship with Jesus or a relationship with Jesus, or even accept the invitation to purely just begin to follow and learn who he is. And maybe for some of you that relationship starts today or that pursuit starts today, but others, maybe your attention is scattered elsewhere. Maybe things have grabbed hold of your life that are robbing you of life. Maybe there's pursuits that are stealing joy or stealing rest or stealing times with those you love the most. And Paul is saying, one thing I do, place my eyes on that for which Jesus has me to do. But let's not, he says, pursue what isn't ours to pursue. Easily enough, pursuing the wrong things can rob us of what's best, what's good, or what's great. Paul wants us to be mature in our faith. And maturity is saying no to things that will rob us of life, and yes to that singular focus of that which Jesus has called us to uniquely do. So where's your focus? What do you need to stop obsessing about, rehashing, holding on to? And what do you need to strain towards? If you're constantly looking backwards, you'll trip. If you pursue something that isn't real and you give your life to it, the payoff is that eventually you realize that it wasn't what you thought it was going to be, and it leaves you empty. You see, these greyhounds, if they ever catch the fake rabbit, they will never race again. You see, the greyhound, once it touches the fake rabbit, realizes it's been tricked all along. And so what is it that we have been pursuing with our life, or what is it that you have been pursuing with yours? And if we might find ourselves, or you might find yourself one day wondering, what is this all about, and feeling left empty-handed, today might be an opportunity for you to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on that which is real and pursue that which is real. Before I took a break this summer, I had a short conversation with some of people in our church, and Destiny as well, who's my wife. And so we just had a quick conversation, and one of the things that I found is hard for me, and it might be challenging for you too, is like I have 4 kids, and I'm married, and we are a part of a small group, and we serve on teams, and Destiny works, and I work, and they all have their own activities, my kids that is, and then we have friend groups. There's a lot to there. And then plus, there's a number of things outside of our immediate work that we did on the side, and so those are grabbing attention, and it just felt like there were so many things that were distracting and taking our attention. And one of the hardest things that has happened this summer is I've had to simplify my life. And I had to come to terms with the fact that there was things in my life that I was chasing that were leaving me empty. And the reality is that there's some people in your life that can see it, but they're not courageous enough to say it. And my hope this morning is that this singular pursuit of saying, God, what is it that you want me to know, and what is it that you want me to do? That this would begin to frame our life, and the things that we know we're not supposed to do, or the things that rob us of our life, that we are quick to say no, and we are more apt to pursue and to simplify our life around the things that matter most to God and most that matter to us. Things like family. Things like laughter. Anyone like laughter? Moments where we can spend time with God. Where we're not rushing from thing to thing, but we have the ability to be present with the people closest to us. That we can actually invest in the things we want to invest in, where we're not just running ragged. And in the simplification of my life, and pursuing around one singular focus, I've had one of the best summers. So there's 2 things that I want to say. As a church, we will be simplifying. And there's some things that we love to do, but aren't necessarily for right now, and that's okay. But it's with the pursuit that we want people to know God, to pursue growth, to know their design, to know why they are the way that they are, and to make a difference in the world. That's what we want for people, is to have those things in their life. And we're going to rally around those things and simplify. But by extension, I want to encourage some of you to simplify as well. To say no to things that are robbing, to say no to things that are just straight up busy, to pursue that which is most important. And for some of you, that might be this idea of knowing God this year and saying, you know what, I'm going to attend weekend services because I know that I can know that I can learn more about God and I can pursue Him. Or maybe it's getting on that Bible reading plan and binging less Netflix, or maybe whatever streaming service it is, if you don't like me singling out Netflix, whatever your streaming service is, right? And simplifying around that. Maybe it's about pursuing growth this year. And it's about getting yourself in a small group. Or by attending the women's event that's happening in November, or the guys' events that are on their way. Yeah, for those of you that know, that was your opportunity, okay? Maybe it's prioritizing those things. Maybe for the first time, it's learning your wiring and how you can uniquely make a difference in your family, in your city. Maybe it's your workplace. or even in your church family. And then maybe it's creating space to make a difference. Maybe you've been so busy that you haven't been able to invest that which brings you most life. So maybe that's small group leading, or maybe that's serving on a Sunday morning, or maybe that's being a part of our free store in October, just handing out clothes to families who are going to come shop for free. Maybe that's what it is. But to pursue those things, to simplify your life, not run yourself ragged, and pursue that which matters most. For those of you who are not followers of Jesus in the room, I just want to say at times the church has missed this, and we're sorry. For those of you who are Christians in the room, the best thing we have to offer the world around us is our best selves. To be whole, to be healthy, to be full of joy and life, to love our families well, to pray, to know our God. These are the things that when we grow in these areas, that they shine the light of Jesus well to the world around us. But when we miss them, it's not all that attractive. So, my hope is we simplify. So I got 2 questions for you today. And so I'm going to open in prayer, and we're going to do something a little bit different this morning. Is that all right? Let's get a little bit out of our comfort zone. And you're all like, what does that mean? It just means for a moment, and I've already asked you once in the service, but I'm going to ask you again just to close your eyes real quick. You see, because it's really easy on a Sunday morning to go by and to not open ourselves up and create space for God to speak to us this morning. So I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to ask you 2 questions. And I just want you to create the space for God to maybe speak to you this morning about what I'm about to ask you questions about. So there's 2. One is, God, what do you need me to know? And the second is this: God, what do you want me to do? And this is what prayer looks like. Often it's listening and it's saying, God, I'm available, speak to me. So this morning, with our eyes closed, God, we come before you. We don't have all the answers, but at times, God, we know that we get busy, and we know that we miss it. If we're honest with ourselves, God, there's times that we chase those fake rabbits instead of the real thing. And we know it, we sense it, and God, let that dissatisfaction in our hearts lead us to you. So today, in this moment, God, we give a little bit of space and we ask you this question. God, individually, what do you want us to know? Today, God, about our lives, about our pursuits and our focus. God, what do you want us to know? What do you want us to know about our kids or our grandkids? What do you want us to know about our friends or workplaces? What do you want us to know about you? And I ask that, God, you'd speak to us. And secondly, God, we ask you, God, what do you want us to do? What is it that you want us to pursue, God? Is it a name that comes to mind? Is it a relationship we need to ask for forgiveness from? Is it something we need to let go? Is it something we need to start doing? God, we don't want to get ahead of you or behind you. We don't want to miss what you have for us. We don't want to pursue fake rabbits. We don't want to just run over a finish line and not know why. So God, lead us. Focus us. This one thing we do. We forget what has happened. We forget what is behind, and we pursue what is ahead. Show us what to do, God. Lead us and guide us, we pray. Amen. So that prayer is something every single day that you can pray. This is what prayer looks like. God, what do you want me to know? and what do you want me to do? So every day, you can wake up or you can end your day and just ask these two questions. Open yourself up and say, God, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? Because we don't want to miss. We don't want to pursue things that God doesn't want us to pursue. But when we get aligned with him, man, there's life and there's joy and there's goodness. So this week, pray those two things. That's my encouragement to you every single day. God, what do you want me to know? And what do you want me to do? All right, I'm going to invite Rachel up. She'll finish the service today. If you do have any questions, I'd love to chat with you after service or pray with you. And I hope you have a fantastic week. Here's Rachel. Want to welcome Rachel back up to the platform? Here we go.
Thanks, Josh. I like having this table. I don't have this when I host. That was awesome. I can't believe Josh resisted saying wabbits the whole service. I was like, is he going to make a Bugs Bunny joke? But he never did. That's growth. That is growth. I'm so happy to be here with you guys. If that message spoke to you, if you're wanting prayer for anything, or you're wanting to take some next steps, or you're just wanting us to reach out to you, I encourage you to fill out this Connect card outside and hand it in for us to reach out and just support you in whatever way you guys need. That's kind of all I've got, except for one big thing. Next week, we've got some baptisms going on. 4 youth are getting baptized. That is amazing. I'm so excited. So I know there's going to be a couple people crying next week. So just bring tissues if you need it. Just be prepared. Yeah, I know you need it. I know you need it. All right. So thank you guys so much for coming. It was nice to see you. I'll be out in the foyer. Come say hi. Go get a coffee and have a good rest of your week. Bye.